And how about?
We did it! Look how good your screen looks.
Oh, I have like so much internet right now.
We can barely hear you though, but it's clear.
Okay, I'll just lean close. How about that?
I think so, but I hope people can hear you.
Okay, I got earbuds.
Maybe try.
Okay.
You got a green wall.
Yeah, I'm behind a green screen. This is actually my, how about, is that better?
I think so.
Is that better?
Yeah.
How now, brown cow? All right.
How now, brown cow? I love it. Say hi.
Hey, John. Dude, did you decorate that tree yourself?
Did you do the tree? Yes. No, yeah? All by yourself? He wishes.
Yeah.
He did a good job. He fluffed the tree and then he put some ornaments on it and he did it with his parents, so that was really good.
Oh, nice.
I know. It might be my speaker that I can't hear you. I don't know. Oh well. Can you guys hear him? People listening? It's better without the headphones.
Yeah.
He has an echo now.
I can take it out. Oh, no. The better or worse?
You're like so soft. Are you close?
I can try the screen. No, I mean, I'm a couple feet away. I got like a little stand, so Eric, how about now? Is that better?
Better, they say.
Okay.
We can hear him. We can hear him. Okay, that's just me. I just can't hear.
Yeah, so that's okay.
It's cool.
So thanks for everybody for joining us tonight too.
I know. We're trying this again. I know it was like a little pop-up and everything, but yeah, you can. I think this is wonderful for people to kind of really see the backstory and, you know, kind of what you're doing and, you know, all the different details in any kind of healing, really. You know, there's so many factors, but I tell people when I describe you that you are, you know, inside the body better than any doctor I've ever met, honestly. Like internal, the things that you say are just like over and beyond, but you know it so well. I gotta tell you, for the listeners, we've been working on like acid reflux for John and coming off some different meds. I gotta tell you, it's changed his bowel movements like crazy.
Yeah, like we were talking about, you know, so when we think of digestion, it's the north to south process. And that's where I kind of backing up the way I think of healing, especially the brain. From a functional medicine standpoint, I think let's just make the brain a good place to be. You know, blood sugar balance, any infections, metals, molds, anything like that. There can be so many other reasons. And to me, that's when the neurology starts to really shine. Because now the cells in the brain are much healthier, and now when we do exercise and stimulation, as we know, there's that capacity and that fatigability. And then there's just more and more resources for the brain to start using better. But kind of like even before that, when we think of something like digestion, I just tell patients, you know, it's a north to south process. And if I chemically wanted to shut off digestion, I would either not swallow my food or not chew my food and just swallow it whole, or I'd take like a proton pump inhibitor. Because we have a thing called gastric sequencing. And I just think of it like a chemical relay system. If your stomach never gets acidic enough, you don't digest the food to absorb it, but you never kind of tell your brain what happened, and your brain can't tell your other organs, okay, this is what's going on. So we kind of cut these chemical scissors. So all things being equal, I say if I wanted to ruin someone's GI health, I would just put them on a proton pump inhibitor.
Right. It's and I like how you described it to me, you know, especially after a brain injury, you know, for those that are listening, you know, the brain gut connection, we all know, but when you cut off one of the layers of digestion, his brain doesn't know.
Yeah, and digestion is like an assembly line. So if you chew and that's part A, and position B is the stomach, well now C, D, E, E, and F, all those can't do theirs down to Z. And I saw people ask me, saying, I'm traditionally trained as a chiropractor. I do a lot of functional neurology, like all the other people that are helping with John. I came from more of a functional medicine, from more of a metabolic background, and I started to work with an autistic kid. And he started to speak for the first time ever, but I knew there was something else. So then, as you know, once you kind of go down this brain healing rabbit hole, you just kind of never look back, at least for me.
Yes. Let me grab my ear thing so maybe we can hear you more. That might be why.
Yeah, well, I think everyone else can hear me. You know, the gut can be destroyed by antibiotics. Sometimes the pros outweigh the cons, you know? So there's always some things to think about. You know, I never really think of, like, I'm not anti-medicine for first thing. Like, I know sometimes that might be the case because some drugs really keep people alive. Like, if someone had high blood pressure, like, please take your medication, don't have a stroke, you know? But when we think of, like I was telling Laura and John, when we think of the side effects of the medication, they're not side effects, they're the effects of the medication. It's doing exactly what it's meant to do. It's just the effects of the medication we don't want. Like whenever we take some of the, like the gabapentin that he was on that we were able to get him off of. Like the whole purpose of GABA is to stop neurons from firing, and that's like basically what we're trying to do with our functional neurology and neuroplastic therapies is to grow a connection. So that's why, like, when we notice, like, hey, he's off this drug, like, it's sticking a lot better, he can keep firing, and we can do more and more rehab, and the memory is now improving. You know, because he didn't feel maybe as much pain on the gabapentin, but unfortunately, it's not like a selective drug. Like, it doesn't just choose to only suppress pain signals, it suppresses, like, hunger signals, all of them. So that's where we get with kind of the medications too, especially in the GI tract. Like someone was asking about antibiotics. I'm not anti-antibiotic, but we get rid of stuff day in and day out in our clinics that would traditionally, like C. diff, all these antibiotics, like I can't prescribe them. And when we retest, we see them go away.
Right.
So we know we can get rid of them without drugs too.
Right.
But you know, by that case, if someone's dying of sepsis, like please take the IV antibiotics so you're alive. You know, so, yeah, I don't think. Yeah, you know, I don't think juicing a carrot's going to help somebody right now, you know, in that scenario. So,
right.
But that's where, you know, what's important, too, is when we think especially about John, like, really trying to identify, like, what's going on. Because we know after a head injury, like, we know the gut's going to leak. And that's where the testing can be cool, but there's some things we already know. And plus, I would say there's a difference between finding a problem and finding a solution. So like, because, you know, a lot of people on here were aware more of like the mold type of aspect, which, you know, we made like great strides in that. But something we never showed anybody was like a poop test and kind of all those, that chemical, like, because remember when we stop that chemical digestion with something like a proton pump inhibitor, well, the brain sends signals to poop too. And think of the gut like a river. If it's not flowing, all this muck's just going to start growing. The water's stagnant and becomes super gross. Yeah, so that's where when you were texting me earlier, like he went twice today, he's pooping every day. I'm like, that's probably one of the better things we can do.
Right.
And like we were talking about our last visit, like a lot of the supplements we're using for the gut are to try to offset the effects of a medication. So if we can just get off a medication, we can probably stop a lot of supplements too.
Right.
Because the goal wasn't to have the list of drugs shrink and then the list of supplements stay like a mile high, and then you're still a pharmacist, or you're still a pharmacy, you're just taking natural stuff instead of like actually having the body heal.
Right.
Because John's doing all the work, he's who's healing, his body's doing it. We're just trying to point it in the right direction. Yeah. We still got a clear room thing.
You have in common, you were in the military as well. You're a veteran.
Yeah, nothing like this guy though. So yeah, but no, he's a brother. No, he's always going to be a brother.
Tell him. What branch? Tell him.
Navy. My dad was in the Navy. Yeah, nice. There you go. Yeah, my dad was in the Navy. My dad was crushed when I joined the Army. He wanted me to go Navy.
Oh, he was like, ooh, I don't know about this.
No, Navy has all the good ports. I have friends in Japan and China, or not, Japan, New Zealand, Egypt, like so many cool places. And then in the Army, it's like where you go, like Iraq, Korea. So, Um, no, but that was, you know, a big thing when Kyle introduced me to you all. Because, like, as, you know, someone that wore fatigues and stuff too, like, what am I going to do? Say no? So,
You've definitely, you
yeah.
know, when we started working together, remember, I was just lost. We were just kind of going down this spiral of infections after infections. And as many of you know, especially when somebody's trying to heal and, you know, it's like UTI after UTI, and not necessarily does it mean that it's, I think the underlying thing that people need to know, it doesn't mean necessarily that you have a UTI. There's something that's causing the UTI to continue to happen. And I think the understanding that we all have, you know, we all have mold in us. We all have all that stuff, but like, it depends on our immune system and what's going on, like how it, you know, just what we're surrounded with. And
it's, you know, the body will always bend until it just breaks.
Right.
Like that's where, like we've talked, I've never seen just like one infection, because I see a lot of people that are like, oh, I want to be checked for metals and pesticides, and I'm like, you're going to find it.
Right.
If you look at cord studies in babies, like every single cord inside of a mother has toxins in it. Every one. So I guarantee all the people watching, 712, if I run enough toxin testing on you, I'm going to find something. I guarantee it. It'd be weird if we didn't. Actually, when I get scared, like if we run mold tests and say we know he has an exposure to mold, but say we run a mold test and we don't see anything in the pee, that actually frightens me more. Because if it's not getting out in the pee, where is it? Right. Although actually the people with the worst detox usually appears to sometimes be the best on the testing. They're like, see, you don't have any aluminum in you. And we're like, yeah, because it's in your brain. It's not in your blood.
Right. Right.
It's not in your pee. So that's, yeah, so there's always like looking at a test, but putting it in context. What do these numbers actually mean? How did they even get here?
Right.
That's to me where, because we have information overload, especially when we think, like you say, John's case is complex. You know, the goal is healing should seem simple, in my opinion. I love it when people say, that was kind of easy. I'm like, that's because the body, we did what was right for it, and the body just ran. You know, when healing is hard, it's because we're not honoring what the body is trying to do. We're trying to probably fight it or not put the body in a state of healing.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what John's doing. That's what you and John are doing.
Right. And that, you know, thinking back to the mold, I feel like it was just last month we started detoxing, or, you know, just really getting that out of him. And it was pretty easy. Not, I mean, to an extent, like once we identified what was going on, and I was able, because I didn't have answers. I mean, I could Google all day long and figure out what to take. And, you know, there's just a lot of different things. And what I loved is you knew, okay, how this is going to interact with this and whatever else is going on in this and that. And so you were able to put together something for him, and it really just fit into the routine, because there's so much information out there. There's so much, right?
And it's how are all the pieces fitting. You know, unfortunately, I don't have like a TBI, mold, leaky gut, like protocol. I wish, because then I wouldn't have to see people. I just like, hey, do this. It's guaranteed to work every time. Like, I wish. You know, and if there was a pill for healing, I'd say, trust me, I would take 2, because I would just double check, right? Yeah. You know, but that's where like you doing the diet, you doing the neuro stuff, that's to me, the most important changes are rarely going to come in a pill bottle.
Right.
I mean, they can definitely help, don't get me wrong. You see the difference between on and off some of the supplements, but we really want the pill bottles to just try to do what we can't eat our way out of, what we can't maybe rehab our way out of, what we can't meditate our way out of. Because like if we give someone maybe a supplement for an extract, it's like you'd have to eat like 2 pounds of broccoli that day to even get what's in one capsule. And if we're giving you 3 capsules, like, can you eat 6 pounds of broccoli in a day? I can't. You know, yeah, so that's really, so we know they're supplements, you know, they're not replacements. And that's where I always like to honor like you. And that's where personally I feel we always have good success with clients, because I'm like choosy. Because if I'm going to spend all this time and energy, I want to make sure you're willing to actually do what needs to happen. Not what we want to have happen, but what, like, we need to have happen.
I think also the quality of supplements is important for people to know as well. As, you know, John was able to get supplements through the VA and not downsizing them. We're thankful for what they can provide. But, you know, what was in those supplements were making more inflammation. And so we have to be really careful of what, you know, really getting some clean.
Yeah, where they source it, how they make it. I mean, so, and that's where, like, from a supplement standpoint, if I'm going to make like a supplement, if I'm going to hire somebody for quality control that says you're an entirely different company, come in and verify that I have pure products and what is in the pill matches what's on the label, that costs probably at least $7,000 per batch. So that's why stuff's more expensive whenever it's made good, because it's like you have to follow certain practices. I mean, I know people that like BPC, like some of the peptides we're taking for John. I know someone that bought some off Canada, just off the website, started injecting it. They developed ALS symptoms 2 weeks later.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah, so hard pass. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I can't say 100% like that. BPC caused them that, but you look at the timeline, right?
Right.
Anyways, yeah. So quality can be really big too. Yeah, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. And back to the VA, like, so I've actually like been part of like research with them, and the system sucks because it's run by the government. They can't. If I wanted to make something less efficient, I would just involve the government. Like to make the phones we're on, if the government had to make these phones, they would be like 5 times as big and 10 times as expensive, and we still wouldn't be technologically where we are today. Right. So anyways, but when we were doing research, all the people in the VA that could have taken money from the research, they donated it so that way we could do more testing for the veterans. We could give them better interventions whenever we're having, here's the control and the non-control, the actual intervention group. So everyone I know actually in the system is extremely good where they're coming from. It's just the system sucks, I remember last visit I was at the VA, they're like, this is depressed. You're like, you're depressed. I'm like, well, this is depressing. So I'm like, what do you want me to say? But they always cared. So I don't think that's really the limiting factor in anything like that. But and people just don't know what they don't know.
Right.
They're not FDA regulated. Which could be a pro and a con when you think about it, because if the FDA is regulating something, like for example, they actually buy up patents for a lot of things and never sees the light of day. Because we were just talking about biologics, for example, that's what they use for a lot of autoimmunity, and even here in the United States, after insurance, it's like I think something like $13,000 a month sometimes. And that's like for someone with an autoimmune disease, maybe like Crohn's. And like, so we'll see maybe a Crohn's patient and they have like just very simple dietary changes. Like one kid, we're like, no grains, no corn, no dairy, just quit eating those 3 things. And that was like a light switch for him. He got off his drugs like the next like couple months.
Right.
Of course, his doctor's like, diet doesn't matter. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So I used to do construction. So I just was like, would you want to build a house with twisted, wet 2x4s, or do you want like good parts to build that house?
Right.
So that's where, again, honoring you, like, the shakes you got to do, all these things. That's what's going to shift the needle the most. And plus your attitude. Mindset's probably the biggest determining factor to me, if somebody heals, or at least the extent of their healing. Because if you were doing all the neuro rehab, lasering, making the shakes, doing this, rubbing the creams, if you were just like complaining the whole time you were doing it, it would nowhere nearly be as effective as the love that you put into it when you care for John. To me, that's like...
I might be a little too silly sometimes.
That's okay.
Do I get on your nerves? Hey, did you see that? You said yes.
Just a little bit, yeah. So wait, you're a Notre Dame fan, right? Okay, and you are, who are you a fan for?
I mean, I went to NC State, but I just go with it.
With whoever's winning, right? No,
no, I go with my play.
Yeah. No, and that's where, like, back to John, it's important that we have, like, a timeline, retesting, because it's nice to have a baseline. But especially like when we saw that big word, that chitosium, the one that was like 11,000 and went to 0, like we were talking, like we know that was like, that's probably more of a current exposure because we're doing a lot of things for mold, but with the amount coming out in the pee, I would kind of expect that much to be like being breathed in at that point.
Yeah. We still don't know where it came from.
Yeah. So,
well, I have my theories, but I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, well, and that's where, you know, and that's where, like, when you look at some of those reports, like, and just for mold, for example, because, you know, and that's where, for maybe people watching, if mold's not your thing, if it's metals, there's always these rabbit holes you can go down. But when we think about molds, and you look at, like, what's called an ERMI, Environmental Relative Mold Index, they're like, for the average person, this is okay. But someone genetically susceptible in a system that's already burdened, like we're already bending from a brain injury and all these things, it can be like one of those things that just snaps. And that's where, like, and we know it's genetic. Like, I have patients where the dad and the son are falling apart from the mold in the basement, and the mom's like, I don't feel anything. So even on the paper, it might be like, well, it's a low level, it doesn't really matter that much. I'd be like, but does that matter to him? Can his system take a low level?
Right.
And that's really different. You know, it's like a sunburn, right? If you have one, any little sun exposure is like, oh, it's so hot, I gotta get out of the sun. But if you're not burned, you don't care.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. It's all about the environment the body's in. I mean, you and I can both come in contact with germs. It just depends on what's going on inside, right? That we can fight.
Yeah, and especially when we think of molds, they, like, as we've talked extensively, they suppress the immune system. They might cause inflammation, but they allow other stuff to grow. They actually disarm the part of the immune system that's going to fight other stuff. So then we get like this piggyback ride effect.
We were having a lot
so
of
like that. Yeah, and like when we think about your stool tests, like this is something that people have probably never even, like you've maybe discussed that much, but like when we reran the stool tests, like we were talking about the biofilm, like we're still chipping away. Like this is a process, you know, and that's where we find like a lot of people that do functional medicine are maybe like in it for like the visit by visit, and I just say you didn't get sick overnight, so it probably is not going to make sense to expect to get better overnight either. You know, we want to have a realistic time frame.
Right.
But to me, that's good because what's coming out in the poop is different than what was before we could measure. So I know we're like breaking one. Oh, yeah. Well, so my bragging point for everyone watching, I've seen more poop tests in the country than anybody else. I have the record. That's what the stool companies tell me. They're like, you have the largest account of anyone in the country. The closest one is like a 4-doctor clinic.
That is funny.
So,
well, Dr. Daigle, when we started working with you, I was like, yeah, we're running a poop test. He goes, he loves his poop test. I was like, you're hilarious.
Everybody poops. You know, if your dog was sick and went to the vet, that's like the first thing they'd ask for. So regardless of what anybody is complaining about, be it like Parkinson's, head injuries, autism, we always run a poop test. I like refuse to not run it. If people are like, is that necessary? I'm like, do you kind of want to get better or do you want to get better?
Right. I mean,
like,
that's
you know?
what's coming out of your body. I mean, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
I mean, on John's level of, I mean, talking back to poop and stuff, through the process of working with you, number one, the form of it has changed. His ability to go has changed. His ability.
I know John's poop you're talking about his poop.
We're talking about your poop. He's proud.
We can talk about mine too. I'm pretty sure people don't want to hear about it, but just so you're not alone, brother.
He's proud of him, I think. Aren't you?
Yeah. That's a good poop. You know it's going to be a good day if you got a good poop.
Oh my gosh. But yeah.
Right?
And those that have loved ones that have TBIs, they know what we're talking about because even when they're in ICU, I mean, I remember we had gone to the hospital one time because he had pooped for a week. And the whole goal of the whole hospital visit was for him to poop before he could get released. So, I mean, it is you gotta, so for those that have loved ones that have traumatic brain injuries and stuff, you know, I know John, they were like, oh, let's just put an enema in him, or let's just do this. Or
the soap enemas, yeah. With the Castile soap. If I wanted to ruin a microbiome, I would shove soap up somewhere that's like, soap's a sterilizing agent. You're wiping out a lot of the good with the bad. And that's where, like, I use a lot of military knowledge. Right? I use a lot of military analogies, man. It was like doing something like that is huge collateral damage. we like used the rocket when we should have came in with a small team. We're just like blowing crap up and good stuff's getting destroyed too, versus more like a surgical. And that's what the focus is trying to, like in the gut, we don't want to make it bad for everybody to live there. That doesn't make like any sense. Yeah, so I just thought that was kind of crazy. I actually trained doctors how to do functional medicine, and I was in the group, I was like, y'all like, this is like normal to do like a soap water enema? And they were like, I guess it still happens. Like, we thought they quit that in the 70s. I don't know. You know?
Maybe you have some tips for those that are like at the early stages of a brain injury and they're having, I mean, what it is you should run tests and stuff, but like getting, maybe give tips of how to get someone to go to the bathroom without putting all other things in their system.
Well, the biggest thing would be is like most people probably know, like vagal stim, vagal stim, vagal stim. Try to send those signals of healing to the gut. Squatty potties work great, believe it or not. To me, it's like pooping has to happen.
Right.
Like there's like no, like it's got to happen. The way we encourage it to happen is hopefully like natural. The brain tells it to happen. There's no little critters in there constipating us. Like all these good things are happening. But if we have to poop, like I love the probiotics Megaspore. I think of them like a multivitamin for the gut. I've never seen any probiotic work as advertised, even close to that one.
Right.
And then I know it sounds basic. I'm a big fan of vitamin C or magnesium.
We do
to make them poop. Yeah, I mean, just to make somebody poop, like, because that's where like all these people watching, like, I don't know if you're on any drugs, like, I have no idea what's happening, but I know safely, I'd say you could probably take some magnesium, probably take some vitamin C. You get both of those up to what we call bowel tolerance. And so you know, for vitamin C, I like the ascorbate forms, like a potassium ascorbate, something like that. That's how you find it in nature, not an ascorbic acid. That's like usually grown on mold. So you can you can tell them to grow anything. You like genetically make them like, okay, we're going to feed them sugar and they're going to poop out B vitamins, or we're going to grow this off mold and stuff like that. Because you turn them into factories, basically. They can churn out a lot of stuff. But oh gosh, where was it?
To go poop.
Yeah, but that's where, you know, the ascorbate forms, we usually have people take like 1 gram an hour until they reach it. Sometimes every hour and a half, and then they're like, hey, I took 5 grams, totally had to go to the bathroom. We're like, 5 it is. But then the goal is to reduce that, you know. Then if maybe a week they only need to take 4, that's great. And same thing with magnesium. Now, we have John on like a special kind, you know, but the citrate's a good kind just to make people poop.
Because I think back to like when he was constipated, before, like when we were in the hospital and stuff, I mean, it was like, what is that stuff called? What is it? It's like Mylex.
Mylanta?
What is it?
Mylanta?
Mylanta, no. It's some powder you put in stuff, and like that was like their go-to, and then he was on stool softeners, he was on
Metamucil?
Sorry? Metamucil?
Was it Metamucil?
Maybe, I don't know. And then he was on a stool softener, he was on, you know, all these like so many different things to make him go poop, and I'm sure they all had side effects. Like because we're not. I one time the powder stuff, I looked at the doctor and I said, "You want me to put this in his body, and it's foreign?" And he said, yeah, but it's going to push it out. And I said, "But I don't want to put anything that's modified in his body." And it just, you know, anyways. Yeah,
like sometimes like mineral oil, for example, is sometimes used, which that's like really bad actually. I have research articles, so I'm a huge nerd. I have like so much research. But I have articles from back in the 50s where they were giving people mineral oil and they're like, this might actually be causing them colon cancer. I don't know if we should be, it's not like inert. And this was like before I was even close to being born. They were starting to figure some of this stuff out.
Can you hear Kaya chewing her bone?
Come again?
Can you hear Kaya chewing her bone?
Can I hear what?
Our dog chewing her bone.
Oh no, sorry.
She's like really loud and right there.
Oh no. But that, you know, there are side effects for a lot of things. Honestly, if somebody's like fresh TBI, like, you know, knock on wood, we don't want head injuries, I would encourage people to just not eat. That's what I would do if I were to hit my head. I would just stop eating. Not obviously forever, But when we think about calming down inflammation, giving the gut a break, you can't fix the road with traffic on it. You have to quit eating if you're going to fix the gut. There has to at least be 12 to 13 hours. Hopefully when we're asleep, that's when we start doing that process, just to clear out the GI tract to start fixing itself, because you spend a lot of your energy to try to digest the food that you're eating.
Right.
Like you got to spend money to make money, right? And the biggest expense for the body is typically making all these concentrated enzymes to break down food. Especially if we're chemically trying to stop that, now we have to expend more energy to try to offset the effects of medication. Here we are again. But if we can just stop, and now the body, instead of is creating energy to try to digest food, now we're going to use energy to heal.
Mm-hmm. It's
like I want to be, I want to be a big, strong guy like John. I just don't eat enough to do it. Like, because when we look at like what we can do now in our age group for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, the best thing someone can do, it appears, is like intermittent fasting. Sometimes every now and then, if you can handle it, go days without eating. Right. Like once a quarter, I go 3 to 5 days without eating.
You know, but going back to like, you know, it's just, you know, sleeping and digesting and all that. You know, I remember when John was in emergent consciousness and stuff, they were feeding him because he was doing rehab during the day. They were feeding him when he slept at night and he wasn't sleeping good. I said, do you guys not see do you not understand, like, his body's trying to rest, but you're trying to put feeding, like, the feed in him while he's trying to sleep?
Yeah, well, because people say rest and digest. It's rest or digest.
Right.
Because, man, to like to clean out your brain and detox your liver and everything has a circadian rhythm. Your arteries, your blood-brain barrier. Like, most of the reason why we start to think like a lot of things cause fatigue that might damage the nervous system, like especially toxins, because the brain gets leakier when you're asleep to try to pull all that crap out. So like back to sleeping, like fresh head injury, we know like sleep is huge. You'll never replace that. We can give people stuff to help them try to fall asleep. And there's a difference between like a pharmaceutical knocking you out. Like we know special forces guys that had to take some pills that kept them up for 3 days, and then they took some pills to finally go to bed after 3 days, and we're like, yeah, you have to take the pill that keeps you up for days? Anyways, this guy's on like, he's like on 7 Lunestas or something, or Ambien before he tries to go to bed. No, he doesn't even know what he took because the government doesn't have to tell him.
Yeah.
So then it's like, I don't know. But you know, when we think of like restorative sleep, sometimes going without eating can be really good too. And I would say physical activity, getting back to aerobic exercise, that whole bed rest, doesn't really work. I'd say anything over 48 hours, you're probably like limiting healing. Of course, like don't do anything to like go hit your head again. Like I had one kid, he was like 16 and wouldn't quit skiing that day. He had like 8 TBIs from that day. He would just run into a tree, get back up, run into a tree, get back up.
Way.
Well, he was completely insomniac at 25. He's like, I haven't slept like more than 30 minutes since that happened.
Wow.
So tough time. So obviously we don't want to get our bell rung again. I mean, and of course John's case was very severe, so that's where the beauty of the brain, we want to get back to aerobic capacity, but we know you moving his arms and legs for him has a very similar effect of him doing it himself, especially if he imagines he's successfully doing it and you can coordinate your efforts for know your infinities and stuff.
Figure eights.
Yeah. Oh man, it's funny when you first try, you're like, this is really hard, but then you're like, hey, I got this.
Got it.
Yeah. So,
your left arm?
yeah, your infinities, man.
Woo. You can do it. Watch him.
Let's see it. See that infinity. Oh yeah.
Good job. See,
nice nonlinear motion.
That's my boy.
Yeah.
He is moving that arm like crazy today, or this afternoon. I gave him a snack in a bowl, and he put it in his left hand and started eating out of it. It's just, you know, without having to be cued, his initiation to do it really happening, which is really, really good. Maybe talk about that little tongue thing that, you know, you had mentioned to me a while back. The stem.
Oh, tongue stem? So to me, I love, when I think of the brain, I think of how it naturally starts to grow, and I just think of like a little flower starting to bloom. So most of when I start with my neurological rehab, I focus more on like brainstem out. Like, and then the brainstem's like a lot of the primitive reflexes, for example. Some of those are very prominent in an area like the pons and things like that. So to me, the tongue is one of the easiest ways. And I do what I call MacGyver neurology. Like everyone else is buying tongue stems. I'm like, do you have a couple 9 volts laying around? You can get out of the smoke detectors.
Yeah,
So
tried that. The 9 volt. Man, that was gnarly.
yeah, it's gnarly. I tell people, and that's where like, of course, you want that fancy equipment, and that can totally help. But like, to me, I find brain stimulation is brain stimulation. If it's a bag of frozen peas on like, the side of the face, your brain can't tell the difference between that and like a $50 ice bag. It just knows it's cold, And to me, that's why I love the beauty of the brain. Like, the more I learned about functional neurology in the brain, once you get past the big words and all the confusion, a lot of the therapies, I'd be like, that's it? Like, we just move their arms in complex, nonlinear, repetitive, or emotions that are different, and so now we're adding complexity, and then we can add a thought process, and then you just kind of think, oh, it's actually, knowing what to do is hard, but the intervention is simple.
Right.
And that's, to me, that's why I love functional neurology. Because when we look at stuff...
Everyone. Like,
we're using, like...
I just can't afford it. I'm telling you, just one visit with you guys, I mean... the hope and the
yeah
I mean
and that's where
one visit's all you need, but I'm saying I've met so many people that I've talked to that they've talked to a doctor and the doctor's like, you will never talk again, you will never walk again, you will never this. And I'm like, once I my first sentence to somebody is, first off, that is all not true, right? And so to go to a doctor that shows you that there is hope, that's not going to happen tomorrow, but there is steps to get closer to it.
And and that's what that doctor knows, and that's okay. That's what that doctor knows. I don't know. And that's where, like, what I always tell people, because eventually, like, when you do stuff like a lot of the people on John's team, like, everybody's a very complex case. And that's why I just say, like, I can't ever guarantee that it would be like before the head injury happened, but what I can guarantee is we're going to do everything we can. Because there is a ceiling. Like, I would never want to, like, look at you and be like, oh, yeah, just give me a year, you won't even know I had a head injury. Like, I could never, that would be, like, the stupidest thing to ever say. Because everybody knows that, like, might be a lie. Like, do I want to put my self-limiting beliefs on how well he can heal? Absolutely not. Because that was that doctor's belief system. So, like, we were told I would never have a daughter, and I created a different reality. Right. You have to create things twice. You create it here, and then you actually create it. Right. And so you're creating your new reality here from that reality that the doctor told you.
Which I think is just what about you guys. I mean, the hope that you give people, knowing that we'll try the best we can, rather than walking out of a doctor's office going, this is my diagnosis, this is it,
Oh, yeah. I don't even like the labels. Because a lot of people want the labels. I'm like, I don't care what the label says. Like, oh, you're depressed. Okay, there's like 1,000 reasons I could think of to be depressed. Right. But that's like the beauty of it. And I know John's a little tired, so. No, and that's where, and that's.
He's done a lot today.
I know.
He
That's a
doesn't
good
stop.
looking
Honey, have you worked hard today? Yeah.
Like a little bit.
Yeah. He's like, yesterday after his parents left, he took a nap and he crashed. He doesn't take naps in the afternoon usually. Like, he doesn't. He can't sleep. Well, he took this nap and he woke up and I said, did you get a good rest? He goes, I didn't sleep. I said, yes, you did.
Yeah, nice. That's where I was seeing someone asking, if you can heal. The longest head injuries I've seen for post-concussive syndrome personally, I feel like 25 years.
Right.
So when she's like 60, she's like, I'm just used to being dizzy in the car. I'm like, that sucks. She's like, I bump into stuff at Target. Like,
it's the truth. Like, I I fell out of a window at 9 months old and I got a concussion, and I've had a lot of symptoms. And what I've always been told, never putting it together, but since John's injury and working with you guys and hearing all these things, I feel better from, so that, how many years is that? I turned 35 last week, so 35 years later.
Yeah. And that's where, I mean, like, I have a frontal lobe injury, obviously not to the extent of John, but I went up in soccer and hit heads right here. We hit heads instead of the ball, and I became a jerk after that. I developed an addictive personality. I was an athlete. I started smoking cigarettes. Like, it was like a complete shift in who I was. And I didn't even know, when you're 13, you don't think that's going to change your life. But looking back, especially after knowing what I know, I think, oh man, I totally had a frontal lobe lesion. I became an addictive personality. Like, I was kind of a jerk after that, not quite as nice as I was. So to me, that's where I love this, because like I do my brain stuff every day. It'd be weird if I knew this stuff and I wasn't like all right, let me just hit up some of my squats, like head movements. Like, it would be weird if I didn't do that, because like I know how I want to eat, and it'd be weird like a cheat meal. I've never understood that concept.
Right.
Like, that's like you're planning on breaking something. I never understood, because like I went through the airport the other day. I just didn't eat. I was like, perfect time to intermittent fast. I don't have to choose what crap I want to put in my mouth. I just won't put anything in my mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not in my mouth. Oh
yeah. No, but no, I wanted to thank you guys for having me. I know like it's getting late and everything, and I wanted to be honored of everybody's time. But I think this was really important, just because, like you said, hope. But to me, the misery of the only miserable part of what I do is people don't know that it's available.
Right.
It's like when people asked Henry Ford, what would people want? He told people they would say a faster horse. They didn't know a car existed. It's funny, cars were invented to actually be like less of disgusting than horses, because of all the millions of pounds of poop in New York City. They're like, this is the cleaner alternative. Yeah, they're like, oh, this is a clean alternative to these horses, and here we are. Now we're like, oh, great, we have all this exhaust. So, no, but, I digress. But that's where, like, people just don't know, like the initial thing you were told, like, hey, this is just the way it's going to be. I don't know why. It's
hard to stomach that, right? Or it's hard to stomach it when you know. Yeah. That's
to me, it's like a blatant lie. Not to sound mean, there's some stuff I hear that's like blatant lies. So like, there's nothing your kid can do for ADHD other than take the medicines. I'm like, yeah, right. Like, how many kids we have all the time that like reversed or whatever you want to call it, like they're fine now. And we didn't give them like slow release methamphetamines to do it. So
right.
Yeah, methylphenidate, such a good time, right?
Oh my goodness, so much to talk about. We got to do this again though, and maybe next time I'll give everybody warning and they can ask a little bit more questions, and you can. This guy's passionate with it. So
that's what I'd say. If your head injury can't replace sleep, can't replace movement, can't replace not eating every now and then.
Right.
Those would be, and none of those are in a pill bottle. The lasers are great, don't get me wrong. Please, if you're watching, Brandon, don't slay me. But, and that's where, like, I love those toys. Like, especially if people don't even know neurology. I'm like, you just point and shoot, like, oh, it was here, boing. Of course, there's other stuff that you can do, but at least there's some very basic things. Like, when I think of maybe, like, I deal with a ton of autoimmune people. I know the genes for gluten sensitivity are autoimmune genes. I don't really have to know all the nuances of gluten-free. I just know they have to do it. So, once the answer is kind of simple, because I can run $300 tests that are like, yeah, you have a problem with gluten, or for free I could be like, oh, you're autoimmune, you just can't eat that stuff, especially in the US. And they're like, okay. But then they go to France and eat baguettes and drink wine, and they're fine. So, Yeah. So if you really want to heal your brain injury and get good food, you need to go have a European vacation, my man.
Right. I mean, when I had pizza in Italy one time, it was like so different than here. I mean.
Yeah. Well, most of the chemicals they spray in our food is illegal in several parts of the rest of the world.
That's so bad.
Yeah, like here I'm in Canada. Like my wife has celiacs, and here in Canada, we'll go to like a restaurant to eat, and she'll be fine. She'll order the same thing from the same restaurant in the U.S. She feels terrible. Oh yeah, and it's just like, oh man, like you try to do the right thing. That's where like cooking from home, you can't beat that.
Right. We do, and I think everybody keeps asking what John's diet is like, and we can do a whole. I think we need to just do a whole section on that, like a whole video, on his food, and because it's so specific to the individual and what's going on. But for the most part, we try to stay away from the corn, the soy, the gluten, the dairy, anything that's going to really just cause more growth or inflammation. And just really try to stay organic and stay away from as much
chemical.
Right.
Yeah, because the glyphosate, like, that's one of the worst chemicals for the brain. Dr. Stephanie Seneff, who is like, I fangirl over her. I see her at a seminar I go attend, I'm like all over asking questions. She's done tremendous work showing how glyphosate affects the gut and the brain axis and basically everything in between. So yeah, really bad stuff. That's where, like, back to the megaspores, like that's why I call them like a multivitamin. They eat glyphosate. They can bind it and chelate it out of foods and stuff. And they do so much. So there's like so many not easy, but simple things. And it's funny because if we look at like maybe the list of supplements John is taking, if you look at what we're trying to do for a lot of it, it's mimic dirt and the bacteria in the dirt and the minerals in the dirt before we ever started to have modern agriculture. Because a lot of the things and a lot of the supplements, we'll go over it maybe next time, it's like part of dirt, these are found in dirt, this is supposed to be in dirt.
Wow.
And it's part of the life cycle.
Right.
It's the circle of life. If we're supposed to meant to get these things, like the bacteria in our home has a very large effect on our microbiome too. Like, it's more than just what we eat. It's the chemicals, it's the dirt that it was in or not in, it's the people that we're eating with, how it was prepared, the food or the house we're in when we're eating.
The water quality.
Yeah, and that's where you can analysis paralysis. Like, I could find anything wrong with any food. People are like, what about this diet? I could crap all over any diet if I wanted to dig hard enough. I try to find a reason to win instead of a reason to lose, though. Like, some people are obsessed with finding a way to lose. I don't know, just look for a way to win instead.
Yeah.
But that's where people watching, look up ancestral. I think the ancestral diets are probably more in tune. So like everyone loves to eat paleo, but what's paleo? Were you Samoan? Were you Inuit? Are you Japanese? Are you like from the Congo? Like, what exactly is paleo? What did your ancestors eat for thousands and thousands of years? Like, to me, I think that's where we should go, instead of like, well, vegan's better, carnivore's better, paleo, and I'm like, you have to look at the people you're testing too.
Right.
Like, you're doing all these studies on.
Because like with John, from sensitivities, I mean, everything that I thought I was giving him, I've said this before, is things that they recommend you would give somebody with.
Yeah.
We're actually doing the opposite for him, but that just shows you like his environment inside him. I mean, how he ate growing up, it was more like that is what his body needed, right? So I think people need to know that, if you're not getting answers and you feel like you're just getting worse, that there's hope that you can feel better. There really is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's life-changing.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I was telling actually my wife when I saw the video of John playing with the dog, I was showing it to her. I was like, I like all my patients and care about them. I was like, I really like John. He's a cool guy. So.
He's a sweetheart. Are you a sweetheart? Are you good looking? Are you good looking? I always tell them.
We'll have to practice some urban warfare maneuvers together. I'll take point because you're obviously higher ranking than me, so I'll just go first in the door. So.
You guys are so cute. He's like so out of it. He's so tired.
Yeah, I know. John, get some sleep, brother. Big hugs. Laura, you too.
Awesome.
It's always great seeing you guys. Thank you, everybody. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
We'll do this again, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night, everybody. Hope you learned something.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.